I'm Angela Daniels with the Panasonic Foundation. As conversations around race, equity, and diversity continue to rise in our country, we wanted to have a conversation with our founding executive director to learn a little bit more about why, for over 30 years, equity has been a value and a priority for the Panasonic Foundation. Joining us today is our founding executive director, Sophie Sa.
Hi, Angela. It's good to meet you and to see you on screen.
Hi, Sophie. I'm so happy that you're here with us today. So, of all the issues happening in the 1980s, why was race and equity in education the founding mission?
Well, let's see. Well, I had the good fortune of having a board that had no agendas. So, except with the only instruction being that the foundation do something on education. And by that, they meant possibly teaching high school kids Japanese, because remember, we were then the Matsushita Foundation. It was incorporated in the US, and with funds from the US company, Matsushita, before it changed its name to Panasonic. So there was some reason to think, well, maybe we should try to advance Japanese studies or expose Americans, the general public, to Japanese culture. Also, because we were a technology company, it was thought maybe we could do something in technologies, support college programs or graduate programs in technology. But 1985 was also 2 years after a really important study came out called A Nation at Risk. And it was prepared by the National Commission on Excellence in Education. And what it showed or described was how poor American education was across the board. Obviously, there were exceptions and good districts, good schools, universities, but for the average American kid, particularly American children from disadvantaged families, the schooling was really dismal. They felt that they called it mediocre. So I read that report very carefully, and it seemed to me that more than anything else, what we could do as a foundation was to contribute to better education from kindergarten through 12th as opposed to college and afterwards, because we needed to make sure the kids had a good basis for moving on. And so I proposed to the board that this is what we should focus on, and the board wholeheartedly supported it. So that's how we got our beginnings.
So what were some initial indicators of success? Like, how did we know the needle was moving? How do we know that you were actually making an impact?
We were a very small foundation, and we were invited by districts to work with them for 5 to 10 years. Often they would ask us to stay another 2 years, another 5 years, and we basically said, 12 is kind of the limit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that just shows that our assistance, our partnership was valued, and I think and we were trusted. I think trust is something that you can't do without. And so I would say those were indicators of success.
I think I want to know about some of your lessons learned just through your experiences over the years and just being a wealth of knowledge. What are some lessons learned you can share with us today?
I think the lesson is that we shouldn't be afraid to think big. That if you focus on very small programs, you may not, you may succeed for a little while, but it may not have lasting effect. And I think another lesson is to think long term. I mean, it's been 35 years or 25 years, and our education is still in need of much improvement. And so changing with the times is also important.
Okay, Sophie, so you are basically the mother of the Panasonic
Yes.
Foundation. So, having watched this foundation be birthed over 30 years ago, what would be your hope for our next 30 years?
Well, I think that it's really important to keep the focus on education, and particularly on education of the disadvantaged, whether we're talking brown children, black children. I think the foundation should be bold and try new ideas. It should learn from its mistakes. I think it should not be afraid of making mistakes as long as it's focused on, keeps its eye on what it wants to do, which is to help students learn better. I'm sure we made mistakes. I think learn from our mistakes. Um, we produced a book while I was there called Learning by Doing. And I think doing by learning as well. And so be bold, try new things, but learn from them. Try to think out of the box. If something isn't working, fix it or abandon it. There's no shame in that. Don't stay with something just because you've given your heart and soul to this thing for 10 years and you want it to continue. And I think above all, for me, it was important always to keep in mind why I was interested in this focus on education. And that came to me as in the 70s and 80s when the Ad Council had a campaign funded by the United Negro Colleges Fund to encourage people to give scholarships to Black students. And that slogan was, "A mind is a terrible thing to waste." And I think of that a lot. I think I had a lot of advantages. I think well. I think everybody thinks, but I think our minds need help to think well, to think best, to be able to take in information, whether it's books or video or whatever. And if we remember that a mind is a terrible thing to waste, and that we're wasting these kids' minds when their schools fail them and when we fail them, I think it helps us remember why this is so important.
Spoken like a woman of excellence, you are.
Well, thank you so much, Angela.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for your time today. We really appreciate just having this historical perspective on the Panasonic Foundation. We hope to continue to make you proud of the work that we are doing in communities of color and serving our teachers. So I just wanted to thank you again for your time today.
You're more than welcome, and good luck to you.
Thank you.